Welcome to the inner world of filmmaking. I'm your host, Tammy Magaro. I'm an editor, podcaster, and still photographer. In this show, I will interview filmmakers in all facets of production and distribution. I'm excited to introduce Nha-Uyen Chau, founder and CEO of LGI Media, which is a boutique television and film distribution company headquartered in Melbourne, Australia. They develop, finance, market, and distribute unscripted programs to more than 150 markets internationally. Welcome to the show, Nha-Uyen.
Hi, Tammy. Nice to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive into distribution. I don't know a lot about it, but I'm excited that by the end of the show, I will. So I always like to start with, what was your road into film and television and then going into distribution?
Okay, very interesting story. I actually fell into this accidentally. I had no idea that you can make money watching TV all day. Although that's not all that we do, obviously. I ended up, meeting a boy, went to the Netherlands and lived in the Netherlands for a few years. So I found a job for this company called Off the Fence. So that's where I started in this industry, actually. So Off the Fence is a distribution company, and they specialized in documentary programs. So I've always loved watching documentaries, but I really didn't know the mechanics and the business side behind all of that. So my entree into distribution was by accident, getting a job at this company in Holland, and then really building my skills from there when I was given the opportunity to be a sales executive for this company. And that's really how I started out. I think with distribution, most people don't really understand it or really know what it is. So if you're going to film school, your ambition is to be a producer, an editor, a writer. But the business side of our industry is something that people don't really know about because it's actually quite quirky. So it's until you sort of immerse yourself and place yourself on the licensing and the sales side of it, it's hard to explain actually to people the path of a program and how it gets onto screen. That's basically what we do in the middle there, from the people who make the content to getting it on screen to the audiences who will see that content. That's what we are.
Yeah, it's pretty daunting to filmmakers because sometimes I don't always think that they think about that and they take the next step. All they're thinking about is, I just want to create this film, this great idea I had. So this is the next step that I think, and maybe you could give some tips on what filmmakers should be thinking about as they're making their film. Should they be talking to a distribution house before they actually film it, or does that really matter? Any tips there?
I think it's a bit of both. Look, what we do, the best way to explain what we do is that we're like the middleman, right? So we are the in between from the filmmaker through to the broadcaster or the network. So what we have is the intel, really. So for a filmmaker, we know what broadcasters and streamers are looking for because we meet them and talk to them all the time. So, we know what genres they're looking for, what sort of style they're looking for, what's working for them. And so that's really valuable intel for a filmmaker, because you might have an idea in your head and you might have a passion project that you're willing to put 3 years of your life into and mortgage your house over. But if there is no path to actually having anyone watch that film that you've loved so much, or there's no way for you to recoup any of the investment that you've made into making this film, I think that's where a distributor, the role is actually very vital. And I think establishing those relationships early on can really help you, pour your resources into whether you want to develop out a project idea or not. And, we also can help you develop an idea so that we can take it to market for you. So I do think that if you can speak to a distributor early on when you've got a project idea or when you're early in your shooting stage and before editing, I think it's really beneficial to actually have a distributor that you can bounce ideas off, really.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And that leads me to that you just spoke, that you help producers develop their ideas. So how does that work? I mean, how do you work with them?
Yeah. So they come to us with an idea, and we'll basically see where we can take it around the world with our existing network of broadcast and streaming clients. So, for example, if you've got a science idea, and you've got access to some great scientists, we can help you shape the story so that it will work for an audience as well as for the broadcasters. Often, if a producer is going to put it's heavy on the interviews. There's not much on the process of the science, and we can advise them on how to use CGI to really elevate their story, how to minimize the amount of people talking on screen, or if they've got a certain talent or host in mind, we can advise them whether it would work or not. So just so that they don't go too far ahead and make those sort of mistakes where it's so hard then to scale back because you put so much time and effort into it and money. And often you might have signed a talent that might not work for a lot of broadcasters for whatever reason. So we can actually help them shape those very early foundational stages of the storytelling and development process.
God, that's really helpful, especially like in documentaries, because that's like a labor of love versus maybe
That's
a
right.
scripted film is.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's right.
And can take a lot longer to produce. And you also help people find funding. Now, are you connected to venture capital money or angel funders? Like, how does that work?
No, so our specialty is really in the broadcast landscape. So when we work with producers and help them raise money, it's really bringing on co-production partners. So we'll go to another broadcaster or a streamer with a project, and we'll pitch the project to them, and then they will come on board as a co-production partner. So the money that they will give towards the co-production in the way of license fees, that's how we raise the money. So we don't orbit the venture capitalists or private equity world at all. Ours is really directly with broadcasters and streamers who want that project for their service.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
With that, could you define what's the difference between distributing a film and licensing a film?
So distribution is really the full service journey that we take on. So to distribute a film, we have to market it as well. So we take on the film, and from that we create the marketing materials. We go to market with these materials, and then our sales team will take it out and pitch it to all the broadcasters and streamers that we think this program will be suitable for. So the licensing part of it that's the deal side. So once we've done all the distribution work, one of the steps in the licensing is when someone is interested in your program, we will then negotiate the deal terms, and that's the licensing side of it. So the deal terms will include the licensing terms. So that's how long they're going to have the program for so that they can broadcast it on their service, how many times they can broadcast it on their service, what sort of license fee they will give you, and what sort of material technical specs that they need as to form part of that licensing deal. So the licensing is really the business side of it, and that's the economics of it. But the distribution side is the marketing and sales journey that program goes on.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. So very much so. So
Yeah.
Is there like an expiration date for documentaries, like trying to sell something that was made 10 years ago versus
It depends.
something that was made?
Yeah, it depends actually. It depends on how good your salesperson is in convincing a broadcaster that they should watch something that's 10 years old. But there is content that has a long shelf life. Some of the award-winning films that we've seen, I mean, we don't have those ones in our catalogue, but a lot of the ones that have won an Academy Award, they can, sometimes their life cycle is 10 years, and you can just relicense them over and over again because they rate really well. Another genre, and again, Tammy, it really also depends on the genre because, for example, wildlife, that's a genre that has a very long shelf life. A program about, monkeys in Japan, it's not going to really change much, right? So if it's beautifully shot, you're going to find continually that broadcasters who are looking for wildlife will continue to relicense it, or you can sell it to new broadcasters. Ones I would say that has a short shelf life will be scientific breakthroughs because, there's always new breakthroughs when it comes to science. So those programs can become a bit dated, and current affairs programs can become a bit dated as well. So it's really a combination of genre as well as the information that's in the program. So we try to find content that has a long shelf life. And, I've been successful in actually licensing programs that are 10 years old. And in the early days of Netflix, we actually licensed some older programs, which our producers were very happy about because they didn't think that there was a second home for it. But we found that, archaeology programs, they've worked really well. Programs about Tutankhamun, even if they've been made 10 years ago and the production quality is fantastic, you'll find that those programs tend to have a longer shelf life as well.
And would human stories be the same?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of, award-winning films in the human interest and people stories, they tend to have quite, a long shelf life. And especially when you've got interesting people or really sort of like shocking people who are extreme. So when you're looking at extreme lifestyles, they also tend to do really well.
I like that.
Yeah.
So the next part is, okay, so you get the money, you do the film, now you're distributing it. How do you market the film? Like, what are your steps of marketing?
Yeah. So look, our network is our third-party clients are all broadcasters and streamers. So we already have a big database on who we would go to for a film. So when we take a new piece of content on, we will then individually curate emails to specific broadcasters and streamers who we know buy this type of program. So then we will send them a personalized email. We will give them the marketing material, which is usually a one sheet. So a one sheet is a beautifully designed flyer that has your, beautiful images that represent the program, as well as your synopsis. And then we also have the screening link. And then we send that to the broadcaster and wait for them to have time to screen it, basically. The other way that we also market a program is we take it to various conferences and festival and markets around the world. So the two major markets that we go to are MIP TV and MIPCOM, and they're the biggest content market when it comes to streaming and broadcast world. And then we also go to various other smaller markets around the world. So, there's markets for Eastern Europe, European clients, there's markets for Latin American clients, there's markets for Asian clients. So we will go to all those markets. And then we have a catalog where we've got all our new content in a catalog, and those programs will be featured in our new catalog as well. So there's no formula to it. It's really a straightforward method where once we have a new piece of content, the first place we go to are all the clients that we know that buy that type of content, and then we also release those titles in our catalog in a market. And obviously, we've also got our website as well. And so all our clients can go to our website, and our catalogue is available on the website. We have the screeners, the screening links available in our website, but we password protect those links because only industry people are allowed to screen them, and we don't give access to the public who want to watch those programs, because that's not our business model, basically.
Yeah. Are you traveling all year round, all the festivals and the markets? Or do you have a team that does that?
For the major ones. Oh, no, yeah, not myself. We have a team that does that. So we've got, we've got an office in Beijing, and our head of sales in Beijing, she looks after Asia. So she'll do all the Asian markets and she'll travel to Asia. We've got someone based in the UK, so she'll do the European and North American markets, and I'll do the markets and the clients that I look after. So each sales team member has their specialized territories, and they will then establish those relationships in those territories. But the two major markets that we go to as a team will be MIP TV and MIPCOM, as I mentioned earlier. So they're the two in Cannes, and that's when the team will come together because everybody from around the world will go to these two big markets.
And so how do you find new projects? Is it mostly like, do you go to these MIT TV and MITCOM, and do they air programming so that you can buy other programs, or are you just there to sell your programs? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a bit of both, because at MIP TV and MITCOM and all markets, there'll be a combination of distributors, producers and broadcasters. So we take a chance at these, at every market that we attend. We always obviously pitch the content that we already have, and we're always there to pick up new content and meet new producers. There'll be established relationships you already have. So, you'll have drinks with your producer clients that you already have established relationships with. And obviously, you'll reach out to new clients or potential clients that you don't know about yet. And we'll introduce ourselves and our company to them, and then try and set up a meeting with new producers, because that's always an opportunity to meet new producers as well as find new projects for us to get involved in.
Yeah, I mean, is that the opportunity? So do you think that filmmakers should attend these, markets to pitch their own films, or do you have any suggestions for people?
Yeah, so I think it depends on what type of producer you are. For an independent producer who only has one film, these markets can be actually very expensive. You've got to get there, you've got to register, there's the accommodation. So it can be very expensive if you've only got one project. My advice would be research different distributors online. And because distributors are very open people, because we're always on the lookout for the best new content, to offer to our clients. So we're always going to respond to you, because I look at every email that comes across my desk, and we screen everything, because you never know what you're going to find. So I would say if you've got one film or just a couple of projects, it may not be worth you traveling all the way to France to Cannes to pitch one project. I would say reach out to distributors first, unless you want a trip to France, of course. I mean, Cannes is a very
that's what I was
place
thinking. I've been there, so I was like, yeah.
Of course. Yeah. But it can be overwhelming and expensive. Look, I think it's great to experience it once. But I know with a lot of independent producers, they'll experience it once and then they'll realize that it's not worth them going back. But definitely experience it once so that you know what the layout of the land is really. And that's when you can also meet distributors such as LGI anyway, and then you can experience and set up those relationships as well. And then, you've always then got those long-term relationships where you can pitch any new ideas you have to a distributor. So the way people find us is online, and we look at everything. And if we're interested, we'll reply to you or politely say no. And we can always give you some suggestions on other distributors that might be more suitable for your type of content. But if we like something, we will then have a conversation with them, look at all the pitch materials, and then we'll take that to market. And another way is obviously at markets where producers will either find us in the database of registered attendees at these markets, and they'll reach out to us. We'll also spotlight different producers and then request meetings with them at various markets.
So do you have any tips for how to approach a distribution company or LGI? Like, what do they need to come prepared for? Because, maybe a first-time filmmaker doing a documentary may not know how do you like to be approached? What are the things that they should be sending you, like a link to their film? Yeah. Is it a, pitch deck? Like, what things do they need to provide?
Yeah. Look, it depends on your level of experience. If you're a first-time filmmaker and you've got something shot already and you've got a pitch deck, that's fantastic, because we're in a very visual industry, so we like to see something. And the reason we like to see something is we know that that's what our broadcast clients will say. They'll want to see something. So a beautifully designed pitch deck is great, but what we need is also the information on your pitch deck. You can create the most beautiful pitch deck in the world, but if you don't tell me what your story is, that for us will be a red flag, because my first question is, what's the story? I want to know what your story is about. So a log line really helps to say, like an elevator pitch, this is a story about character-driven story about, whatever. And then give us a paragraph pitch. So expand that, maybe a 4 to 5 sentence pitch. And if you've got a pitch deck, then attach a pitch deck. If you've got a sizzle or a trailer that you cut together, that's also fantastic. And that's for an early project where you might be looking for some financing or some broadcasters to attach. That would be what's best in a pitch stage, because if you've just got a synopsis oftentimes we'll say, yes, it's a great idea, but, have you shot anything? Because we want to know what the quality is going to look like. We want to know what sort of eye you've got, because I think quality is very important to us. We really focus on high quality, blue chip, if we can, type of programs. So if something's like middle of the road for us, it will probably be a no, because we really want to work with top tier broadcast clients as well. So your visual and your vision for the film is very important. And that's why I do recommend, if you can create a sizzle, that would be amazing. Even if you're pulling images from the internet, from YouTube, I mean, it's only for private and pitching purposes. But if you've got visual references of what sort of images that you want, what sort of footage you're going to include, that also works as well, because a sizzle is just really an indication of the type of show that you want to make. If you've got a completed program, just reach out to us, give us a short synopsis of what your program is about, and then send us a screening link, and then we'll screen it. And if we like it, then we'll come back to you to say that we'd like to take it on for distribution.
I would love, if you don't mind, is some don'ts. When you're looking at some films and you're getting the stuff, is there any kind of like, don't do this? Like, this is what I've seen happen, don't do this, or however you want to spin that in a positive.
Yeah. I would say really try to tailor and personalize your pitch. Really understand what it is that you're talking about, and to the person. Just don't say hi, and then write your synopsis. I would say really try to say, even if you don't know who the right person is to reach, just say, hi, LGI team. I think people really will respond to that. For me, I think that really check your grammar and spelling mistakes as well, because I think a lot of people don't reread their emails, and I think that that's really important. But also just really get your pitch right. Really tell the person you're pitching to what your story is about. You have to get them excited to want to open your trailer, to want to open that deck to screen. Really sell your story. Tell us in a very short pitch what the story is about. Have you won any awards? Sometimes that helps. Who do you think your audience of the film is? And tell us really, I just really want to know what your film is about. That is the do. So if you waffle and you don't give us a good pitch of what your film is about, and if I can't understand your pitch, it's a bit problematic, I think. So my big don't is really not to understand your film and not refining your pitch. I think that's really the most important thing. Creation of great pitching materials, because I think that also reflects on the quality of your work as well. Because if you are a visual person and you're giving me just, a one sheet that's typed up in a Word document that's designed very poorly, I think that beautiful presentation does help to get your project to the top of the must-watch list as well. So, and I think, look, everyone's different, but I think the initial pitch really helps. So, don't send something that you're not happy with. Always check what your story is, and make sure that your story, it's very clear what your story is. Make sure it's clear what you want. Are you looking for distribution? Are you looking for money? Don't just send it and hope for the best. Really be clear about what you're asking, what your call to action is, what the next step that you would like from this person who's received your email to make, basically. So be very clear in what it is that you're after when you reach out to someone.
And then anything on when you've been watching the film, any kind of things that just have stood out for you, like you just said, quality. Make it top quality. Anything
that's right
that you've noticed where do you watch the whole thing, or do you go at some point I'm turning this off, this is not good?
Yes, absolutely. Look, I like to watch a whole film if I'm enjoying it, because I want to see how it ends. But just to give everyone a tip, look, a broadcaster or streamer, their time is very limited. So it's not just our programs I have to watch. The first 5 minutes to 10 minutes really matter. So if you start off slow, you better build it up with great quality so that they want to stay in there and watch it to the end. My advice is try to make it as exciting as possible and hook your audience within that first 5 minutes, because if it's not well made and it's not well written, then you're going to lose people and they will turn it off after 5 minutes. So if I've started watching something and the quality's not great, I'll give it about 5 minutes and then I'll turn it off, and I know that it's not for us, because if it's not for us, it means that a broadcaster is definitely not going to stick around to watch it longer than we have. So you've really got to grab their attention within that first 5 minutes. And a beautiful opening scene or beautiful photography it really helps, because that we know that there's potential there because it's going to be well produced. So the second bit after that is going to be the story. How quickly can you hook me within the first 5 to 10 minutes? And if you can, if I'm interested in watching more, then I'll continue. But if I've lost interest within the first 10 minutes, then we tend to, to stop after that, basically.
What types of film and TV shows are you looking for? Like, if anybody's out there and they might have something, what are you looking for?
Look, our specialty is factual and documentaries. So we specialize in that. So anything that you have that's in the factual space. The genres that we look for are wildlife and natural history, science, history programs, whether it's contemporary history or archaeology, like ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, people documentaries, strange and quirky people, but that with themes that we can resonate, whether it's about love, relationships, and adventure, someone who's, the underdog, that's triumphant. So really strong stories that I think are with universal themes. Travel and adventure, we really like cooking and lifestyle programs, arts and culture. So we look at all genres, really, as long as if it's well produced and a great story, that we think that we can find, broadcasters to acquire it. That's what we'll take on. But the first 2 points really is, will there be an audience for it? So really the audience for us will be a buyer, and then how well is it made? And they're the 2 factors that we look at when we take on and screen any program.
And going back to LGI Media, what made you decide to create this distribution company?
I really love storytelling, and I love working with producers. I love hearing what they're making. And I really wanted to have more connection to producers, and I wanted to decide what type of programs that we took on. So I worked for a very big company, and I loved it. It was more because I just like being my own boss, and to build up my own company. That's really, Tammy, it was really that simple for me. And just meeting a lot of producers along my journey that I wanted to support personally. I wanted to, tell their stories and help them tell their stories. That's why I just love doing this. And I've just been really fortunate to been able to grow the LGI brand. We've been around for 15 plus years now. So I've just been really, really lucky that we continue to work with really great producers and offer very high-end content.
So from working your sales job, is that how you created all your relationships with broadcasters and stuff? Like, how did you do
correct.
that?
Yeah, you just reach out to them, really. Yeah, so it's just really, it was going to a lot of markets, but you really need to build up a catalogue of great titles. Broadcasters might like you, but if you don't have anything for them, meeting with you is going to be a waste of time, right? So it's really, we're constantly looking for great content. So please, don't be afraid to send your content and reach out to distributors, because we are always looking out for great content to service our broadcaster clients. That's really our role, is really to connect great content with broadcasters. So going to the various markets, meeting these broadcasters and maintaining those relationships. But it all comes down to what sort of programs you have in your catalogue and who will it be suitable for. That's how you know who to reach out to.
Another daunting thing is, how do you prepare your film for distribution? Do you have any tips for that?
Absolutely, because this is an area that I think that can actually fail a lot of films, because it's just not broadcast ready. So we have a list of technical requirements that we will send to the producer once we've signed our distribution agreement with them. So the list will give you an idea of all the broadcast quality technical requirements that you need to export your master in. So that's your finished program. So there, you'll need to have, for an international version, what producers will need to know is that what the difference between a texted version and a clean version is. A clean version is to remove all subtitles, any lower thirds that you would have. and you would have to have separate audio tracks. So, don't mix down your audio tracks. If you've got narration in your film, you've got to have that on a separate audio track. And the reason why that's important and that you may not think of is that in a non-English speaking territory, they may dub these voices. For if you've got a voiceover and you've mixed it down and you only have one audio track, that means that any dubbing can't be done because you can't remove the English audio. So that's very important. And so we've had producers who mixed everything down, and they've had to go in basically in post-production and find those audio files all over again and then separate them. So you've got to have your separate audio files. You've got to have time-coded scripts. So you've got to get a post-production transcript. So for every spoken word in your film, that needs to be transcribed and separated in when that time code has that person speaking. And again, the reason why we have this is for non-English speaking countries for their subtitling and dubbing. So they'll need those scripts to create their own localized versions. We'll need music cue sheets. If you've used music that's royalty-free, we just need that to be listed on a music cue sheet, that it's all royalty-free music, because broadcasters will have to pay the royalties to the music artists. So the composers that you use on your films and your documentaries, you'll need to state who they are, what piece of music of theirs that you've used, and that gets sent as part of our delivery requirements to the broadcasters as well. We'll need some fantastic images. So, and when I say images, it's images from your show. So what does your show, what do these images show about your show? If you've got, a particular character, there's some nice photographs that you might have taken. There's, so anything that you think will promote your show, we need images of those, because that's going to go into the promotion and the marketing of your show. We will need the end credit list. So everyone that's credited on your program, will need a list of that. And we will also need the synopsis for your film, because obviously we create these one sheet, and the synopsis is very, very important. So do pay attention on how you write your show, because your synopsis is what's going to sell your show as well. The trailer, if there's a trailer of your finished program, I think that's also very important, because more and more broadcasters will ask for a trailer and some artwork as well. We're really starting to ask for some artwork that you've created, or we can create that if you don't have it. But when you look at the way that streamers present each program to get the viewer to click on it, that's the artwork that becomes so important now to really sell your show. What is that one defining image that really encapsulates what your show is about? And then, what's the style and the font of the title? And how do you present that so that a viewer who sees it is going to want to click on it and see your show? These are all things that we need in order to promote your show as effectively as possible.
So do you think that it's important to maybe hire a still photographer? Because, sometimes people will grab screenshots of the film, which is not high quality, and you shouldn't really be using that for marketing. Yeah. Is it wise to, maybe hire somebody for the day to take some stills? Yeah,
look, I think if you can afford it, yes. But I know that a lot of documentaries are also working on very slim budgets. But, iPhones have amazing cameras these days, right? So even if you've got an iPhone and you've got a photo of your cast together, and you've got, a second, or, the director can take a photo. It's just things like that you should be aware of. We do have instances where, these screen grabs are being taken, and you're absolutely right, Tammy, they're not high quality, and they get rejected from broadcasters because they can't print them, and they look terrible when they're being blown up. So I would say that for, filmmakers, especially when you're about to go into the field, have a think about how you want your film to be shown, and the images that you need to take. Yes, so don't do it in post. That's probably something that's probably best not to do in post, because having great images really helps to sell your show as well. Because when we create these one sheet, we use the best images from that program so that we can really draw attention to it, basically. So it is very important. That's definitely for sure.
Well, that's great. I'm so happy that you shared that, because I think that's the daunting thing, is that sometimes I think, again, we're not thinking about all those things. Like, even just telling your crew, hey, could you all just like, whenever you think about it, take out your phone and take some pictures,
Yeah.
stuff like that, you're right, could be very simple and cheap to do. And
Yes.
most of us do have our phone, and most of us are taking pictures.
Yeah.
Now, do you do social media posts as well to promote and market?
Yeah, we do. Look, we've got socials as well, but we're a business to business
Right.
organization. So it's really, our followers will be maybe broadcasters, but then there's individuals. But then, we've had individuals reach out to us to say, hey, how do I screen this film? It's on your website, but it's password protected. And we have to say to them, oh, you can't screen it, because only a broadcaster or someone who's going to license it can screen it. So it's really just important for us to make it clear who we do socials for. With, with the filmmaker, if they're doing their socials, obviously it's for the broad audience so that they can, build up a following. But for us, our purpose is really to try to get it into the hands of the broadcaster so that they can screen it. And then once they screen it, the program sells for itself. And the way I describe my role and our sales role is that think of your distributor or your salesperson as also a film reviewer, right? Because this goes to, selecting the right distributor and sales agent for you, because I always think that my job is like a film reviewer, because I watch everything and I make my team watch everything, because if we don't know what we're selling, we can't get a broadcaster to be excited about your film. So we have to know how to pitch your film. We have to be excited about your film, because we are the first step to someone requesting a screener of your film. And so when we are excited about it and we tell the buyer, you have to watch this, I think it's really going to I think it really might work for you. It's amazing. It's a story about this person, or it's so beautifully filmed. We have to understand all these unique selling points. Once we get the buyer excited, that's when they're going to say, yes, send me the screener. And then that's when we'll send them the screener. So we have to be so excited about your film. And so my advice is pick someone that you have a great synergy with, and make sure that they're transparent and that you ask, your distributor all the right questions, and you feel confident, because we understand that this is your baby that you're handing over, and you want to give it to someone who's going to understand your film and understand how to market your film as well.
Now, is screeners now all digital? Because back in the day, you used to send a VHS
Oh my God.
or a DVD.
Yeah. Oh, Tammy, that's when I started the industry. Oh my God, it was really painful. Like, we would carry, like packages like this. And that was when I started, and I was at the bottom of the ladder, and I was the one who had to go to the post office, right? And send all these screeners out. Yeah, but everything is digitized now. So it's just a screening link. Send us a link wherever you're hosting it, whether it's Vimeo or Dropbox or whatever. Of course, if it's password protected, which is I advise that you do password protected, and always make sure that you send the password as well. And do check that your link works before you send it off, because sometimes, people set the wrong password or the link doesn't work, but just make sure you've got all of that. So just make it easy for someone as possible to have everything at their fingertips to get ready to screen your film.
Why don't you tell us about some of your upcoming projects and how you raise funding?
Yeah, sure. So one of the big ones, which I'm very proud of, that's just delivered this year, is a big archaeology project from one of our favorite producers out of the UK called TV6. The process came together when the producer, we were just talking about new ideas, and he told me about this idea about this archaeology project. So the story is about the collapse of 3 major civilizations during the late Bronze Age. So I knew for sure that was going to work internationally, and which broadcasters I can take it to. But the stage where we were at with that was, it was an idea stage, and they sent me a treatment, and I wanted to do this project so much that I went out and basically had to raise most of the money to make it happen. So I went to the Science Channel in the US, which is part of the Warner Brothers Discovery group. I brought on SBS in Australia here. I brought on NHK, which is a Japanese broadcaster. I brought on France Television, which is French public broadcaster. And I brought on SVT, which is a Swedish broadcaster. So there were 5 broadcast partners who put in the financing for this program. So, and in the US, it went out on a different title, with a different title. It was called Ancient Armageddon in the US, and the international version is called Bronze Age Apocalypse. So each broadcaster, also the majority financiers, will have editorial control. So once the producer goes out into the field, they will send back a rough cut, and then we will send it to the broadcasters who have editorial control. They will watch the rough cut and they will give us their notes, and then the producer will make some changes based on the feedback and the notes of the broadcasters. And why there were 2 different titles is that for the US audience, it just worked better for them to have a different title, and we were fine with that. And internationally, it went out as Bronze Age Apocalypse, which we'll be launching at MIPCOM. I think this project really represents the landscape, the current landscape that we're in at the moment when it comes to raising finance for a project, and especially more big budget projects. Broadcasters are having their budgets cut now. So even though they want these blue chip high-end programs, we have to find more broadcasters and more partners to bring on board to actually raise that budget. And they're more open now because they realize that they can't fund it alone. So there's going to have to be a coalition of broadcast partners who will come together to be able to make these high-end programs happen.
Wow, that's interesting. And it just made me think of something where you retitled it for one country versus another. I was just wondering, when you're watching a film, and you see their tagline and, the description of the film, have you ever watched it and said, you need to change the tagline? This is... Yeah. And it is where you help them is you watch the film and then you kind of reread their one sheet or their pitch deck and then kind of help them correct it or,
That's
tweak.
Right. And sometimes the title isn't sexy enough or doesn't say anything, because this original title actually was called The Day the World Collapsed, but then it was over a period of 40 years, so the title didn't make sense. And then we changed it to The Year the World Collapsed. And again, it wasn't that attention grabbing. And so it was really our American partners who were like, okay, can we change this so that, an American would immediately want to watch it? So Ancient Armageddon, that sounds like a pretty cool, title. And then Bronze Age Apocalypse is what, is what the international broadcast partners wanted. So, we just allowed the US to go with, Ancient Armageddon. And then for the international audience, it was Bronze Age Apocalypse, which works better, I think, than the Year the World Collapsed,
Yeah. And maybe that's another thing for people in titles. Don't make your title too long. Might be a tip, don't. And
That's
also, it's funny, because you're talking about different countries, you need to use different words to spice them because they're going to understand that versus somebody else may not get it,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I guess, when you're doing titles, that's okay to change the name, because it's the same film.
Yes.
So, but because it's in a different country, well, who's going to, notice that?
Oh, yeah, exactly. And the title, look, when it comes to a project or even a title, that's the one thing you can change. That's so easy. It's like you might get to the end of the film and you're like, oh, God, that title sucks. This is a better title, because maybe it's something that someone said in during the program. You're like, oh, wow, that actually makes a really good title. And so when we pitch a project, we always pull working title, on any project, because it could change. You might find a better, and a catchy title is probably one of the hardest things that anyone can do. And even broadcasters, they've got teams for this. They sort of come up with all these titles, and then it's like, okay, let's just everyone give us your best ideas, and then let's see which one we all like the best. And that's probably a lot of the times that's how titles are finalized. It's like, okay, we like this one the best, so let's go with that.
Mm-hmm.
But even for this one, we had 3 different options. Oh, sorry, Tammy. So even for this project, before we went with Bronze Age Apocalypse or the international, we had 3 different titles to choose from, and it's like, okay, which one do you like the most, and which one do we think will generate the most attention, basically. And it's about attention grabbing as well. It's like the more disaster sort of sounding, in this instance, the more it'll probably pique someone's interest to want to have a look at it and go, oh, this sounds like this is an interesting title. I'm going to read more about this. And that's what you want when it comes to a title.
Oh, definitely. And probably you want them to understand what they're seeing too. Like they don't look at it going, wait, what is, I mean, it's so much. There's so much complexity that goes into everything. Like the description, the tagline, the title, it all has to kind of mesh together.
That's right.
And I was kind of curious, do you have like target groups where they watch the film to see how it plays, or no, at this point, you're just going right to you like it, that's enough. So now you're moving it forward to the distribution company.
Yeah, that's right. Because we're not in the consumer business, right? So for us, there's no test audience. That would be for the filmmaker if they want to test it, or the broadcaster. But our test audience is really our broadcaster. So we don't really, we just know that if it's a particular film for a particular genre, we know where it could go around the world. And that's how we decide whether we're going to take a film on or not.
Right. Then I was just wondering about the catalogs. Like when you started your business, how many films were in your catalog to now?
Oh, so we started out, I was only, acquiring probably about 20 new titles a year. But now our aim is to always have at least, 100 new hours a year across all genres, so that we've got something new to always, satisfy our various clients, because some clients may only want science, others are only looking for wildlife. So it's really important for us to acquire across all genres so that we make sure that we've got enough to maintain those relationships with our broadcasters. And that's really important to us because you can fall off the map. And, within the broadcast industry, buyers change all the time. So you've really got to know what's going on. Keep your fingers on the pulse of what they're looking for, who's in that position, who's moved. So there's so many chess pieces that you have to make sure that you're aware of, so that you're able to service, all your clients basically, or most of your clients.
How does payment work? I mean, is this like if somebody comes to you and they have a project, is it really you get paid on the distribution side? So once you do all the work and then once you sell it, that's when, or do you charge a fee to work with you? Like, how does that work?
No, we're a commission basis. So for our producers, so we take a commission, and that's varying depending on the type of program and the type of deal structure we have. But we, for us, our producer clients don't have to pay anything until we make the sale for them. So, they've entrusted us their great content, and then it's our job to try to find as many sales as we can for their programs. And so we take a commission from the license fees that we get from the broadcasters. So we report. So the way that we work is that we report to our producers quarterly. So in these distribution reports, they will get a report that will tell them where we've sent their program to, which broadcasters are looking at their programs. Once we've sold the programs, we'll list all the broadcasters that have acquired and licensed their programs, what the license fee was, any deductions that we take off, and then they also receive a royalty report. And that royalty report is what their statement is to tell them how much they're going to be paid in that quarter for all the sales that we've made for them. So it's very straightforward, but we're very transparent in the way that we report sales and data to our producers.
Oh, that's interesting. So do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I would like to let producers know that the business side is equally as important. I mean, your creative process and the production process is absolutely very important. As part of how we can work with you is both at the creative side and the business side. So if you've got a creative idea and you want to know whether it's going to work and who would it work for, reach out to a distributor because, we are your sounding board. We've got so much intelligence from meeting all the various broadcasters from around the world. Our expertise is global. So we'll be able to tell you which markets this idea might work for, and we can help you shape the story so that you don't go down too far down one path and, spend so much time developing something that probably might not work. So that's one side. And the other side is the business side. We help make you money. So we help get your shows out there once it's completed. so that you can receive a return on your investment. So that's also, what we can do to help you after your film. The journey doesn't end after you finish the film. There's a new journey that starts, and that is, how do you get, your film seen on as many platforms as possible, but also making a return on all the sweat equity you've put in. You might have investors, you might have put your own personal money in. So how do we try to return that investment for you as much as possible, basically? Because our job really is to try to make as much money for our producers as possible with all the broadcasters that we know around the world.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Tammy, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I hope it was helpful in some way. I love what you're doing, and, that you're trying to really help industry people, especially filmmakers, I think, understand more about the industry. So it's absolutely wonderful.
Yes, I agree too. Thank you. Thanks for saying that. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to get out there and make a film. Reach out to your local filmmakers group to get involved and connect. Please subscribe to the show if you like it, and follow me on Instagram @Tammy Magaro. Until we meet again, what's your story?